Wake up in the morning and I ask myself, it's like worth living, should I blast myself? I'm tired of being poor and even worse, I'm black. My stomach hurts, so I'm looking for a purse to snatch. Cops give a damn about a need, bro. Pull a trigger, killing niggas a heat, bro. Get it back to the kids, who the hell cares? One less hungry mouth on the welfare. First ship them, don't let them deal with brothers. Give them guns, step back, watch them kill each other. It's time to fight back, that's what Huey said. 2 shots in the drop, now Huey's dead. I got love for my brothers, but we can never go nowhere unless we share with each other. We gotta start making changes. Learn to see me as a brother instead of 2 distant strangers. That's just the way it is. Gotta make a
Couple of minutes on the dreadful fire that took place. You know the old saying, a picture says far more than 1,000 words. This devastating incident, so tragic for so many families, has demonstrated certain things in a way that no amount of propaganda, even the most sophisticated and even the most popular, written in the most popular language by our party or anybody could do. It has actually brought before the eyes of the British people the chasm that deprives, that divides on the one hand, the destitute, the deprived, the poor, the unemployed, the homeless, those housed, lucky enough to be housed in social accommodation on the one hand, and the rich living cheek by jowl. One of the good things about Britain has always been the rich and poor lived cheek by jowl. And it has been the endeavor of the bourgeoisie in the last few years to put an end to it. They do not want the poor to be spoiling their fun. They do not want the poor to be living next door to palatial places which most of the year are never occupied. South Kensington is the richest place in Britain and possibly in the whole of the Western world, where to buy a broom cupboard is £2 million, right? To buy a 2-bedroom flat, you're looking into 3-4 million. These are expensive places. And when more information will come. Our party is going to put out more information on the details of it. But what is clear is it's a combination of penny pinching on one side and attempts at excluding the poor from these rich areas and indulging in social cleansing. This building was, I'm told, I'm not a scientist, so don't take my word for it, you have to do it yourself. It's covered in some material which is highly inflammable because it was slightly cheaper.
5,000.
5,000. So they saved 5,000. Big do, you know, these are times of austerity. We must tighten our belts. So they saved that. But on top of that, what they were really concerned was that it was an architectural nightmare to have these council places next to rich ones. They wanted to cover in something glitzy. They wanted to cover it up to make it attractive to be privatized and then sold to land grabbers. And this is being done not just by the Tory councils, it's being done by Labour councils as well. All over the place, they are really involved. And would you believe one of the poorest boroughs, London Borough of Lambeth, is guilty of it. It's ruled by Labour. It's guilty of these things more than many, many other boroughs in London. They want to cleanse this. And the result has been that poor people have paid for their lives. People were incinerated into it. They were sitting ducks. There was no way they could get out. Some who were not too high from the ground jumped, broke their limbs, etc., and got away. But huge number of people were burnt to death. You know. The whole building was turned into a raging inferno.
Earlier you said you came here, you've been outside here from about 12.
I live in 13 with stable since 12:30 last night. I outside when the fire start. We see the fire from the front and this thing burn like what do you call it, starlight. You can remember starlight, as I light it goes like if you light an explosive.
Yeah, fuse, highly flammable,
right?
yeah.
That's how fast that building burn. Right?
Go up like a candle, yeah.
Worse than a candle, like them fuse, the thing that goes, watch me, the thing start to the front of the building here, square the building here, right? It start here, 4th floor.
Yeah.
And then it do so. And by the time I do so, it's up the building, it come on my side facing me here, and burn this whole thing come up here so. And then start to go around the building. No time. No time. I'm telling you.
Yeah, that's what I heard. It was
wickedness.
It's straight up.
What happened was this so-called refurbishment. It's not a tragedy, it's a crime. Yeah. Because what they did, because a tragedy is something that's sort of, you know, unavoidable, because you have a clash of personalities or a clash of events. This was totally avoidable, totally avoidable. It was a so-called refurbishment, which was ill-conceived, badly constructed, badly effective, and done on the cheap. Notwithstanding the fact that £8.1 million spent on it, it was done on the cheap. And the tenants were saying throughout, this is being badly done. It's being badly done because there are exposed gas pipes in this one solitary stairway, and the one solitary stairway was made possible because of the concrete construction. That was part and parcel of the construction was such you could contain it, could contain fire, hence the advice to stay in your flat, because that was the safer thing to do, hence the need only for only one stairwell, because it was never envisaged, because of the way it was constructed, that you would need a mass evacuation. You would have time to get the firemen in to deal with that as a local event within this tower. But what they did basically was to provide channels for fire to travel. And the gas pipes going down the staircase was one example, and the other one, but the chief one, was the panels. Now, I'm not sure yet, I'm going to have to look into it, because I've been asked to write about it, whether, I've seen conflicting reports, and obviously it's very early days yet, they're all saying, oh, you don't make judgments, wait. But were they insulation panels, or were they panels just to prettify it? So it didn't look like a 1970s concrete block, for the reason that you're saying, because Kensington want to sell off their neighbouring land for private development. They want to make these blocks less obviously social housing, less obviously, you know, concrete blocks. In either case, it was the wrong cladding, and it was the cheapest form of cladding available, which has a flammable core. And if you want to have insulation, apparently steel wool is the best, because it's neither flammable and it's more effective insulation. If you want to prettify, this is the wrong choice, because you're not meant to use this for buildings more than about 30 feet high, you know, a couple of stories. Precisely because it's known, and it's been associated with fires elsewhere, that this cladding acts as like a fuse run.
Basically, I was lying down the bed with my daughter and my girlfriend, and all I could, because I've always been paranoid on that block anyway, every time I'm in there, like, so I just heard fire, and I got up, and I woke everybody else up, and everyone wore the clothes and everything, and tried to run out the door. Well, as soon as I opened the door, all I could see was the smoke, so we ran back in. Then I gave some towels to my missus to pour around the door and everything, and I started passing water from the bathroom so that she could put on the towel and everything here.
It's because of the cladding, the fire was able to jump, and we saw the way that building went up, like a tower of flame. Absolutely scary. And more than the flame, what has also been apparent in recent days is that this particular chemical composition that's in the centre, the core of this cladding, as well as being flammable, causes poisonous gases. And what killed most of the people was the smoke, and inside the smoke was the gas. And it actually confounded by the fire retardant chemicals that are sprayed on furniture to make them comply with, you know, fire regulations. Because once you get a real fire getting really a hold, then of course that furniture goes up, and it all adds to the poisonous gases. And it's smoke that kills, it's the gas that kills. And one of the firefighters was saying you couldn't stand up. If you stood up within that smoke-filled atmosphere, you began to feel dizzy. So they had an extra problem. It wasn't just the fire, it was the smoke, the dense smoke that we read about that made it very difficult for the people higher up actually to get out.
And I think people are very angry, and they were demanding answers from the Conservative government. Some people have tried to say, what has to do with Theresa May? Everything. For the last 6 years, you had a Conservative government. Before that, you had a coalition government, which was run basically by the Conservatives. They have been in charge of that. Things have been happening on their watch. There have been report after report demanding certain safety measures. For example, the fitting of these buildings with sprinklers.
But the crime is cost-cutting and the reasons, the way it's done, and contracting and subcontracting. So you have a number of subcontractors, and the one subcontractor who put the cladding up said, oh yes, it complied with fire regulations. And now in defence of, presumably the local authority, they've started to say, well actually no, the building regulations would make that not compliant because it doesn't have the right fire resistance for a building that height. Well, in which case, why did not defence the local authority, why did the local authority with its other hat on, of building regulation control, not stop them putting it up? So the local authority is implicated on two grounds. One, they are the owners of the building and they contracted the work. So they had the plan, they appointed the contractors, they paid the money. Lovely, the contractors, taxpayers' money, guaranteed payment. The local authority, as building inspectors, had to see that this was okay. And to say now, as a kind of justification, that, oh, well, it shouldn't have gone up. They suddenly realise, actually, they've been caught with their pants down. They shouldn't have used this. It doesn't comply with building regulations. Well, it either does or it doesn't. And if it doesn't, why was it there? And if it does, why does it comply? And the fact is, no matter how they wriggle, they can't get round the fact that the Tory government, and before it the coalition government, has had before it reports about fires using this cladding in multi-storey things, in multi-storey flat blocks, that have said you need sprinklers. There are questions because of what's happened abroad about these cladding, but the sprinklers has been an issue in other fires in this country, and the Tory and coalition government before it have sat on the requirements since the recommendation since 2013 inquiry that large blocks would have sprinklers.
Right about now, because at the moment what we've got is a Conservative government. We have a Conservative borough that has neglected this community. Do you know what I mean? That does not see the community, that has disregarded and looked down on working class white people as well as non-white people in this community. They treat us with contempt. Look at the residents, look at where you are, look at the housing there. These are the most marginalised people, in the most vulnerable and marginalised people. The council doesn't hear these people. They don't even see them. That's why they went and spent 10 million on the facade of a building rather than putting sprinklers and fire alarms. Because they're much more concerned about the aesthetics of an exterior of a building as to how rich residents in this borough sees that as an eyesore and how they can pad that up and ignore the rights of the people inside. That is the reality. So when you talk about, is this Corbyn, this isn't political. Do you know what I'm saying? This isn't a political issue, it's about people's lives. Look at the burnt out building, it's a monument. Do you know what I mean? It stands as a permanent exhibition until it's demolished. Do you know what I mean? People wake up in the morning, they've got to see that. And every time they see that, they see how marginalised, disenfranchised and divided they would like this community to be. But when they...
I mean, we have a small place in Southall, which, when it's filled to capacity, can take only 100 people. We had to, as per the regulations of the local authority, put water sprinklers there. Why would you not have a building which has got 600 flats? And 120 flats, but people living there. Why would you not have sprinklers? Why is the building not built in a way that when there is fire in one flat, it is contained in that flat, if not forever, at least for 2, 3, 4 good hours, so that people have a chance to get out? It wasn't done because what mattered to them was the reduction of the deficit. And where does the deficit come from? Overwhelming part of it comes from rescuing the bankers during the worst financial economic crisis. It's not the fault of the working people that is the crisis. I don't even actually go along with the left-wingers who say it's the fault of the bankers. Who is to blame capitalism for being capitalism? It's the fault of a social system. It is so positioned itself in our time, it can only fail, because the contradiction between social production and private appropriation is such that the social production cannot be contained within the narrow shell of capitalism. That shell has to be broken. Private appropriation has to be put an end to it.
What do you want to happen now? What do you think?
What do I want to happen? I want it to be a revolution in this country. I say fuck the media, fuck the mainstream. You don't deserve to be there, do you know what I'm saying? I mean, we should be campaigning not to government, but to the BBC, who acts as mouthpieces for this corrupt government. Do you know what I mean? People need a revolution in this country, nothing short of that. And if this was any other country, there'd have done been a revolution. We've seen how you, the mainstream media, have responded and reacted. For 2 years, you've hounded, demonized Jeremy Corbyn. And you said he was unelectable. He can't be, there's no possibility of this man being elected. And you created that narrative that people actually believed your bullshit for a while. But what this election has done is shown that people are immune. They're wearing bulletproof vests to you and the other billionaire sort of media owners and Rupert Murdoch and all those other motherfuckers. They're immune to that shit there. And that is the vote of confidence, not in terms of Jeremy Corbyn, but it dismisses May, but it also stands up to you as the mainstream media. I say you personally, but I'm identifying you as the mainstream media. Do you understand what I'm saying to you? I'm saying identify as the mainstream media. You are motherfuckers. You are a bunch of motherfuckers.
So, although it's a fire which has affected a few dozen families, there's a larger lesson. Wherever you look, as in the old Latin saying, all roads lead to Rome. Our answer is that capitalism cannot solve the housing crisis. Engels said that 150 years ago in his famous book, The Housing Question. Capitalism is incapable, not because there's no money, there's plenty of money, in fact there's too much money. Capitalism is incapable of solving the housing crisis. To solve the housing crisis is to deprive the rich of being able to exploit poor people. There's absolutely no reason why, with our technological abilities, we can build houses more cheaply than we ever could because there is so much technology.
This isn't a race thing. This isn't black or white. Do you know what I'm saying? It's a class thing. The borough with Victoria Borwick, that MP, she didn't speak to these people. Victoria Borwick speaks to those people in Chelsea.
And much more quickly than we ever could. There's no shortage of money. In fact, the problem with capital is not shortage of capital. There is too much capital chasing too few opportunities for investment. That's why it runs all over the world. It leaves the imperialist countries, goes to other countries abroad to make a fast buck. So that's why idiots like Trump or anybody, or left-wingers who say we should have capital controls, we should not do it. All they are asking, if they're not fighting capitalism at the same time, all they are asking is the standard of living of the ordinary people in imperialist countries shall be much reduced, because capital exports provide huge amounts of benefits, not only to the capitalists, but also indirectly to the populations of the imperialist countries. So those who are desirous of good housing, good education, no unemployment, peace, and no such devastations as that took place in North Kensington, have only one duty, namely fight capitalism, fight imperialism. Thank you so much.
But I come back to the point. The necessity of the sprinklers was really caused by the cladding. So we have to look very hard at what was the purpose of this cladding. We're not talking about making the flats better inside, which is part of refurbishment, giving them new cookers and new this, that and the other, new boilers. Why put up this cladding at all? What was it for? Was it really to make it better for the tenants, more energy efficient, in which case you had better choice, or was it to prettify it?
Cosmetic.
If it was cosmetic, then it is a crime on top of a crime, really, because it's unnecessary. And as I said, this is not a tragedy. It was not a tragedy. It is a crime. And we hope that I think people are beginning to see that it is a crime, in fact. And some veils are being torn from some eyes. We have to wait and see what happens as a result.
Thank you very much.
Saying. I mean, we should be campaigning not to government, but to the BBC, who acts as mouthpieces for this corrupt government. Do you know what I mean? People need a revolution in this country, nothing short of that. And if this was any other country, there'd have been a revolution. We've seen how you, the mainstream media, have responded and reacted.